Hi, my name is Rick, and this is So Meta.
So Meta.
Hi, I'm Luca, your host here at So Meta. I'm also coach and hypnotherapist at LucaMindCoach.com. Rick DellaRatta is an international jazz musician, an entrepreneur, and a philanthropist. Welcome to the show, Rick.
Thank you, Luca. So happy to be here with you today.
Glad to have you. You have a really interesting story, very quite unique. So there's a lot I'm going to ask you today, but I want to start from jazz because it seems to be all about jazz.
Good point. Yes, it is.
Is it fair to say that your mission is to achieve world peace through jazz?
You can say that. What happened with me was that I had witnessed the events of 9/11 from a rooftop less than a quarter of a mile away from the World Trade Center, not realizing that I was one of so few people in the world that was watching this live. I just had no idea. But basically, shortly after that, that day I had a poem. And shortly after that, when the country opened up again, I had recited the poem. And after that, I was asked to put it to music for another concert. While I was waiting for that concert, I received a phone call from someone in the press who was recording the call because he wanted to get everything I said into his article. And something he asked, we were just talking, and I said, if we just embrace our greatest qualities as people, and I named some of them. I said creativity and artistry and intellectuality and humanity. And I said, if we embrace these collectively, we would have a better chance at avoiding the behavior that leads to destruction. Well, not knowing this either, that when the article came out, that sentence got picked up because he really wanted to publish my Jazz for Peace poem that I had written. So I recited the poem. But that was a sentence I just spoke in the article. That sentence got lifted by famous quotes magazine websites. Any website you go to that has famous quotes, it's on there. And so when you say the art form of jazz, it's bringing to my famous quote because, again, the art form of jazz has creativity. The art form of jazz has artistry. The art form of jazz has intellectuality. The art form of jazz has, it has all of these greatest qualities in the art form of jazz. So
rich.
Yeah. So in one sense, I'm using music in general because I play all styles of music, but the art form of jazz is where I draw a lot of the improvisation, and it's bringing that into the whole performance that makes it a full spectrum experience where all of these qualities are involved in the performance. And I do believe that if we do that, my goal really is to go from 0% funding for peace to 1% funding for peace. That's what I'd like to do.
I think that's a great goal to have.
Yeah, because I think that the world would be changed dramatically. I mean, you yourself, people like you are looking at what Jazz for Peace has done. And just imagine we did that at zero. You know what I mean? What if funding for peace was just 1%? Imagine what could happen then.
It would be huge. Yeah. So this is a lot to start with already. So I'm going to put 9/11 aside for a second. We'll circle back to that because I think it deserves its own section. Hi, this is Luca from So Meta. I want to talk to you about the paid partner of this episode, BetterHelp. I've been in therapy for most of my life, since I was a child really. The benefits of therapy are so profound and really help us live better lives. That's why I chose to become a therapist myself, to help others. But therapists also go to therapy. And when I need to talk things through with a professional, I choose BetterHelp. When my mom had cancer, I needed to talk to someone to unravel my thoughts, my worries. I was traveling a lot and I spent a lot of my time commuting, or I spent it with her, looking after her, supporting her. That meant I was away from my home, from my friends, from my routine. My life was on hold and I didn't have a support system for myself. That's why BetterHelp was the best choice for me at that time. All I needed was my phone or my laptop and access to the internet. I didn't need to travel to someone's office. I didn't have to scroll through endless directories, and I didn't have to break the bank either. After a short questionnaire, BetterHelp matched me with a credentialed therapist based on my preferences within 48 hours, which is usually how long it takes to get matched. But if for whatever reason you want to change therapist, you can do so with a click. It's that easy. I love that I could book and manage my appointments based on my schedule. And I could even access group therapy sessions that are organized by topic. BetterHelp made it easier for me to look after myself when I was looking after my mom. If you need support, let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist. Visit betterhelp.com/SoMeta or use the code SoMeta and enjoy a special discount. And now, back to the show. However, I do want to dig a bit into the jazz and your passion for it. And where does it come from? How did you get into jazz?
You know, I was doing two things when I started playing the piano. I was improvising on my own, and that's because I was a 6-year-old kid and this piano had shown up in the living room on Christmas Day. So I assumed it had something to do with Santa Claus, and that because Santa Claus had gone through all that trouble, I should try to figure out what this was. So I was trying to figure out all by myself. So my initial response to seeing a piano in my living room was to improvise, was to play and listen and hear the sounds and like, what is this thing? And eventually I was doing it kind of trying to keep it secret. I didn't want to, I'd never do it if anybody was in that room, but if everybody was over in the kitchen or in some other room, if everyone was distraction, I would be in that piano playing with it, trying to figure it out. So that is the improvisational nature of jazz. But then I got caught. Now, either someone told on me or my mother heard me or I don't know. Next thing I knew, I was being taken to a piano teacher, and that teacher was teaching me classical music, which, I could not dismiss because it's great music that comes from all of these, Chopin. I mean, how are you going to dismiss Chopin, right? I mean, and all these greats, Mozart, Beethoven, so Bach, oh my God. So, I had that. And then I had the music on the radio, which was the pop music. And I saw the effect that had on my friends and myself. I mean, their beautiful melodies and all the joy that music was bringing to people that was coming out of the radio. So jazz kind of completed the picture when I kind of ran into these records by accident in a library. And I'm like, and I pulled this giant drawer out and I'm like, what are these things? What is this? And I started taking them out of the library. And then I was listening and it was way over my head. But once again, I could not discard it. It was too powerful for me to, just kind of dodge. It was a bullet I couldn't dodge, so to speak. You know what I mean?
I love that story. It sounds like a story from a film.
A lot of people have said, people say stuff and eventually it does come true. There are people saying that Jazz Repeat should be a film, and they've been saying it quite a bit. The latest person that said it, fortunately, was not just a friend or a concert goer. It was actually a movie producer. But he doesn't have the money to do it. But he's a award-winning filmmaker in Vancouver, and he has talked to me and said, "This has got to be a movie. It will be a movie, and all that stuff." But it is a book.
It is a book,
and the book is called "Paving the Path for Peace Through Music: The Amazing Story of Rick DellaRatta and Jazz for Peace." And I highly recommend this book for a lot of reasons. One, because it was a passionate kind of activity of one of our volunteers, and I was able to assist on it. That person, the volunteer, was collecting data because ChatGPT can scrape data from the internet from all the years of so she was able to get data from all these different things that we had done, and I was able to oversee, to do some interesting things. Like I was able to put in there things that can help people with fundraising. So when outstanding causes work with us to raise funds, I can actually refer to pages in the book.
That's great. I definitely want you to maybe, if you're comfortable, to read a few lines from the book
Sure.
later on, if you
I can
like.
do that.
I would love that.
Okay.
Now, we got a picture of how you got into music, but what's music to you on a daily basis? What do you do with it? What does it do to you?
Well, I would see, for me, because of jazz, music is the full spectrum that it has always been. I mean, I think if you look at history, if you look at indigenous people, I've traveled around the world and I've met the Maasai tribe in northern Kenya, and I've met their cousins in South Kenya. I've met, indigenous peoples all over, even American Indians, in New Mexico and places like that. And music to them is not pure entertainment. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not pure entertainment. It's not something that sells a whole lot of beer. It's not what we use it in our ism. Our ism is capitalism. And we're doing what works in the ism that we're in, whether it's socialism or Marxism. We've embraced capitalism, and it's fine and it's great, but it's limited. You see what I mean? I mean, if you're using music just to entertain you, that's fine, but it's almost like eating just the frosting on a cake. You know what I mean? You're
Absolutely.
missing a lot of what it is. So with jazz, you're getting a lot of that back. A lot of the things that you're missing in, let's say where it functions as background music, or where it functions to sell a product, or where it functions as pure entertainment on the Super Bowl or whatever. But jazz is really giving you the full spectrum that it should have, and that the indigenous people have had, and that people all throughout history have had. We're the ones limiting it, and we can undo that. So that's my message: is let's undo it. And then when I talk to a lot of people with podcasts like you that have passions about things like self-improvement and stuff like that. Wow, music is great. I mean, anybody can use music as a meditative, they can have a personal relationship. When I read you the passage to my book, you're going to really see what I mean by the question you just asked.
I can't wait. I honestly can't wait. I love what you're saying, because I completely agree. I think music, art in general, but I think music has something quite special. It's a connection to spirituality. It influences everything. It influences all types of art as well. So it's really something that I think we really connect to, and we can communicate through, and also get in touch with our own emotions and process a lot of the things that maybe sometimes cognitively alone it's difficult to process. So yeah, I love that. And I love that jazz, we see jazz as a sophisticated kind of music, quite maybe upper class even. But actually, I like to think of jazz as basically the punk of the 1920s, because it was completely revolutionary. It was a way to express rebellion. It was a way to communicate social and economics issue. And I love that it changed so much throughout the years. But I also love how actually quite dangerous was back in the 20s.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, the idea that it's elitist or has something to do with, it should only be listened to by the elites or something like that is, it couldn't be farther from the truth. I mean, I was an opening act for one of the people who invented bebop, and that was Dizzy Gillespie, and I shared a dressing room with him. And he was very open about the fact that him and Charlie Parker had created this music for all of us. I mean, they were the last thing on their mind at 4:00 in the morning in Minton's Playhouse, in Harlem. In an after hours gig, which wasn't even a gig. They weren't even getting paid. It was a jam session. As they were involving the music, the last thing they were thinking about was, some king or queen in the middle of Scotland. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it was coming. And, the same goes with Louis Armstrong. In fact, the word jazz we don't even spell it right. When I went to Haiti, there was a big sign to greet me, and it said, "Welcome, Jazz for Peace, JASS." And that's because it's not even our word. Jazz is a Creole word. It's a
Right.
Creole word. And what happened was another place I played was Ghana, Africa. And when I played in Ghana, Africa, they took me to the slave castles where people were marched to those castles. And then those castles, they were taken on boats. Many were taken to Haiti. And then there, that was a French colonized island. So now they adopted a language called Creole, and JASS is one of their words. And when they were taken from that island to New Orleans, it was them that were listening to jazz because it was just being, like you said, it was a rebellion. It was a rebellious statement of truth coming from
Yeah.
musicians. And who's going to listen to that? You know what I mean? No real estate owner is going to, no part of the status quo is going to be,
Absolutely.
yeah. So it was just the Haitians that were hanging out there because they're like, hey, free entertainment. And these guys are pretty good, who knows what they were thinking, but they started calling it jazz, JASS.
Oh my God, this is so fun. I love all of this. I do love the history of jazz because it's really quite remarkable to me. And I love how it was born. There's a lot of fire in jazz music. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back now to 9/11 because that's really what started Jazz for Peace, isn't it?
It is, and mainly because I had this baby, so to speak, inside me. I mean, I was basically pregnant with knowledge that the average person did not have from being a musician and from traveling around the world and from telling people at dinner parties like, hey, I don't know if you guys know this, but I was just at a jam session and there was an Israeli and a Palestinian playing. They come here to play music and they were in the room with me and I was, with a bass player, we were all just making music, and there's like, wait, I thought those guys supposed to be at war. I thought it was supposed to be like, aren't they supposed to hate each other? I'm just telling you. And they're like, wow, and then one guy said, you know information that the rest of us don't know, like nobody's telling us anything like what you just told us, that Palestinians and Israelis hang out here in New York City and play music together and get along just fine. And I said, well, I don't know what to tell you. I can get them on my bandstand if I wanted to. They would come and play and they wouldn't have any problem at all. You'd never know that they were on two different sides even. So people were shocked that I was privy to this knowledge by accident, just by bouncing around and playing in any little jam session or somebody called me, play it, just playing wherever and playing with people from all over the world. Then I was traveling all over the world and I was noticing it didn't seem to matter if I spoke the same language. The music would break through. You know what I mean? The music would reach people. So music and the art form of jazz, which I was playing, was cutting through every kind of barrier that divides us. So whether it's language, whether it's culture, whether it's religion, whether it's creed, no matter what it is, music breaks through. So I had all that information in me when I got a phone call on the morning of 9/11. Hey, I'm down on Wall Street. Something's going on. And I said, let me just go up. Listen, calm down. Let me go up on the roof and just see because I can see the World Trade Center right from my roof. Some idiot probably flew a kite into there. So I just, yeah, it was a girl that had taken pictures of me the day before for her photo catalog, and she had a day job down there. And she called me. Who knows what time I would have woke up that morning if it wasn't for her. And I was like, listen, let me just go up this. Come on. What could it be? And I really went up there to calm her down. Hopefully, she didn't know what was going on. She calls me. She didn't know who to call because, we had just spent the day. In fact, if you ever look at the Jazz for Peace CD, that photo was taken by her on the 10th of September.
Wow.
So the woman who took that photo of the Jazz for Peace CD on the 10th, she's the one who called me the next morning from her, because her boss's son was in the second building, the first building that got hit. Her boss's son was in the second building. So what happened was the first building got hit. The son called his father and said, hey, something's up with the other World Trade building. There's a fire. I don't know, something crazy. Looks like an explosion. I don't know what it is. What should I do? It's like, geez, I don't know. Should you stay there? What? It can't be. I mean, it's got to be. And then the father said, you know what? just to be safe, why don't you get out of there? Just leave. Just go down. He said, okay, I'll see you, Dad. And he hung up and never saw his son again. Because she called me, and then when I went up, that's when the second thing happened. So anyway, here I was witnessing this, but so it was kind of like, they say luck is when preparation meets opportunity. I was ready to make a statement. I didn't know if anyone would ever listen to me, but I was ready to say something, because it was at that point that I'm watching those events and words are just coming out, So like I was telling you, I had this information, and it was like I was impregnated with this information. Well, now I was giving birth. You know what I mean? It was coming out in the form of a poem. I was writing it down, and that's all I had to show was a bunch of words that scribbled on a piece of paper for that day. And I figured, well, this is all I got. Well, maybe, I don't know, I'll call it Jazz for Peace. And then I don't know what's going to happen next. You never know. And then one thing led to another.
Wow. Where is that poem now? Where can we find it?
Well, I'm sure it's in this book, Jazz for Peace.
Okay.
I could, as part of my musical thing, I could recite the poem to you, and then I sometimes improvise.
I would love that.
Okay, so
please.
So you'll hear the poem. So the poem, I'll tell you where people will be able to find the poem is your podcast.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Whenever you're ready, then you can take it away.
Okay. Let's do that. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to start out in the subject when we were talking about the birth of jazz in New York, the birth of bebop, really, because jazz, the JASS part actually came from New Orleans, and they were calling Louis Armstrong that. Then jazz went to Kansas City and had a little bit of it started working its way east, really. And then New York is where really jazz caught fire with the advent of bebop. And New York also had something called Tin Pan Alley, where it had all these, songs of the day, and they would take a song of the day and do something and become jazz. So I'm going to start with that. It's a song called Just You, Just Me. It's just a goofy little song from Tin Pan Alley, and Thelonious Monk took that song and he put a composition over the same structure, and he called that Evidence. So I'm going to do like a combination of that. Then I'm going to go into a free improvisation that includes the Jazz for Peace poem. And then,
amazing.
And then I'm going to finish with something that is another dimension of where we were. So we were taking, like Monk was taking a Tin Pan Alley poem and taking it that. I'm going to take an actual song by a jazz great, a composition of a jazz great, and put my own lyrics on it. And give it so that will be after Monk came Coltrane. Actually, Coltrane played with Monk and then kind of took the mantle forward, further from there. And Coltrane wrote a song called Lazy Bird, and I wrote the words to it. So I'll finish with that. Just you, just me, let's find a cozy spot to cuddle and coo. Just us, just we, I missed an awful lot, my trouble is you. Oh gee, what are your charms for? What are my arms for? Use your imagination, just you, just me. I'll tie lover's knot round wonderful you. hear jazz for peace coming through the trees. In my heart, it fills me like a celebration. I see the lights, and I want to follow. Inspired by the past contributions of those that came before. And laid the groundwork for us to build on. In this universal language that's a gift for all mankind. And when we speak it, people are inspired by the creativity and artistry that stands for peace and love and humanity and intelligence that leads to reaching potential that we have in our souls, so we can raise our total conscience and see that the gift of giving is our greatest privilege. I hear jazz for peace. I'm a lazy bird. I only fly when my soul is inspired. I'm a lazy bird, but I'm not scared when I dare to be heard. I wear my heart on my wing, outpours my soul when I sing. I'm a lazy bird, but when my heart cries, I sing to the world. Lazy bird, when my heart cries, I sing. When my heart cries, I sing to the world.
Wow. Thank you so much, Rick, for performing here at So Meta. I mean, this feels quite special, actually. I'm very honored.
Great. I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's almost like having my private concert, and I can share it with people. It's beautiful. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that, Luca. Thank you. My pleasure.
So you have traveled all over the world performing jazz to raise money for charities and to achieve peace.
Right.
So what are some of the stories that you can share with us? I'm sure you've met so many people in so many countries and in desperate situations sometimes, I suppose. And I believe that sometimes when we hear certain stories, we do take away something that will enrich our lives. So what are your takeaways throughout years?
My biggest takeaway is the possibility. See, we're in something cyclically. It's called the fourth turning, and it's every 85 to 100 years. This cycle repeats and repeats. And the fourth turning, which we're in now, is a very it's a very crazy one because it's a lot of upheaval. There's a lot of things like war. It's warlike. And because a lot of things are coming to a crux and an end, and there's a purging. But sometimes you're able to see the solutions reveal themselves because things get so upside down that you actually see the solution by tipping it right side up. So in other words, sometimes it's hard to see when things are a little bit messed up. It's hard to see the solution because it's like in the gray area, But now we're getting kind of like this, where you're like, wait a minute, I see the solution. It's here, and we just have to do this. And so now we're in a very interesting opportunity, which has a lot of it has been revealed by the journey of Jazz for Peace. And that is the fact that we can incorporate the actual people and use technology and some of our advances to help them achieve their goals and their passions. And a lot of people that are not satisfied is because they have a passion inside them that's being suppressed and they're not able to get it out. Maybe they go to a job all day that they're not too wild about, and then they have 2 hours left to try to fulfill that, passion within them. And they're so tired they go to sleep and wake up the next day. We have a chance now for the average person to play a role in peace. In fact, every single person out there is what's going to help us get from, because we're all going there. Hopefully, the whole world is going to go from 0% funding for peace to 1% funding for peace. And basically, it's just a matter of us all playing a role at whatever part we can play, and sometimes it's just a little thing, but that little thing makes a big difference. Somebody
Absolutely.
at the United Nations did a little thing and said, okay, let's bring Rick in here with this multicultural band and have this little performance. Well, that little performance resonated, and when we do the opposite, we can have the opposite result. And I was on a show yesterday where I was talking about a situation in Germany, which we all know about in World War II, where the whole country was depending on one person. This is a country full of people that all of them have possibilities and potential, but they're all dependent on one person. And that person was, having issues with drugs. Now we find out with, he had that doctor, Hitler had that doctor that was shooting him up with meth, and, he was out of his mind and he couldn't, that you don't want to be stuck in a situation where you're depending on one person and that person's, got a bunch of cards missing from his deck, But this would be the opposite. The opposite would be bringing out the best in all of the people that, have the common sense to say, hey, let's go from 0 to 1 here. And this is the way to do it, the way to do it. Helping outstanding causes that are passionate about fulfilling their mission statement. That's one way to go from 0 to 1. And, there's a whole bunch of other ways, but helping those who are helping others is one big one.
What does that give you on a personal level to help other people?
It enriches me in a way that the other ways to supposedly get rich won't do, so that's why you have a lot of people now that are, they might own they might own zillions of things, and on paper, are worth billions of dollars, but they might not be fulfilled inside because they haven't actually benefited. The knowledge that you did things that made a difference are what some rich people come to that conclusion eventually and become philanthropists that actually do some good with their philanthropy, But, it's enriched me in a way that no one taught me, that's rich. You know what I mean? They taught me that something else is rich. And even still in my mind, I still look at that other thing and say, okay, that would be nice. But I wouldn't trade the wealth that this has given me, the inner wealth.
Yeah. I mean, capitalism does that, isn't it? We think that success and achievement is just about money and what, how many followers you have and the deals that you have. And we kind of forget sometimes that, might look really good from the outside, but actually does very, very little for ourselves and the way we feel. It doesn't really fulfill our souls, does it?
No, and see, the problem I was facing was here was society telling me that why aren't I just trying to be like these other people that society looks at as, being rich? But then I look at those people and I'm like, what are they getting out of this supposed richness? I mean, a lot of them had very tragic lives, are very tragic, getting a very tragic result from this, and even, I mean, you look at some famous people that lose their privacy and, you look at people that win all these awards and then drink themselves to death. I mean, or die at some, ungodly young age. I mean, in other words, what they're telling you is not adding up in actuality. And you have to make some decisions that are going to be, that within your heart are the right thing. And following this path has enabled me to, feel like I've gained something that can't be taken away.
That's great. I can clearly see that you have values and you align to them, and you have a clear mission, and also it's very jazz. That's what jazz was about. So I love how everything comes together in your story. It's fantastic.
Well, I appreciate that. I really do. I just, I would really like to see artists and people who have this ability to, to affect people in a positive way. I would like to see that effect take place in the world, during their lifetime. The one thing I was going to read it, and when I read you the book, is just, it's about, a great artist who was not able to do that as so many artists are. I mean, as we know, there's so many artists who we look at them now and they're like, wow. But in their lifetime, they couldn't even sell a painting.
Yeah, it's mad. I think about that sometimes. And it puts everything into perspective, though. It in some way, it calms me down because there's so much pressure to perform nowadays. You have to be online all the time. You have to show people what you've achieved, and you have to, be successful. There's a lot of pressure on being successful. And a lot of the time, it is just too much. But when I think about what you just said, it puts everything into perspective. I say, okay, I'm going to be fine. It's all right.
Well, and you can also read about some of these past people. They also felt like they weren't successful because society was telling them such a different story. I mean, the classic one is Van Gogh, of course. He shot himself. And then then when they said, what the heck did you do? He said, I even failed at that, he said. And, then he died from that wound. So he actually succeeded at that. So he didn't fail at it. And then on top of that, all of his paintings are phenomenal successes when we look at them today. So it's perspective, I think it would be nice if there doesn't have to be a century-long lag time between the artist's achievements and, the good that they do for the world.
Absolutely. So if you'd like to read us a few lines from your book.
What I'll do, I only wrote 2 pages. So, I mean, the book is, the book was, the author is Deborah Seratelli. And I highly recommend, like I said, the book. But I was asked to write the foreword. And I think the reason what I wrote is important is because, again, we're talking about perspective, and you're going to definitely get some perspective in this forward. So I'll read that to you, and it's short. Here it is. Lovely. This is what I wrote.
This podcast is brought to you by LucaMindCoach. As a therapist, I understand that talking therapy isn't everyone's first choice. But I also understand the impact of listening to other people's stories and how these can give us the strength and inspiration to find our own solutions for ourselves. And this is why I started So Meta. And for those of you who want to learn how to manage stress and some relaxation techniques, I created a quick self-paced workshop you can do in your own time. Take advantage of a special 20% discount and really learn how to manage stress for less than $40. Use the code SOMETA20, link in the description box.
It is the year 1761. A child in the Appalachian Mountains or Nigerian province or Japanese prefecture, in other words, a child somewhere, is given a musical instrument by his father or mother. Okay? At the same time, a child in Austria named Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart is also given a musical instrument by his father. The child in the middle of nowhere plays the instrument, and through his relationship with that instrument, he finds himself. He connects with his spirit. He feels emotion and creativity and humanity, and he advances in all kinds of ways through his own personal connection with the instrument without any tutelage whatsoever, other than songs and music that he may hear in his native surroundings. The child in Austria is immediately bombarded with instructions and demands to practice and learn and advance to a level of prodigy, encouraged by his extraordinarily educated father, who was also a noted composer, instructor, and the author of famous writings on violin playing, and who was also in the service of the Archbishop of Salzburg. The child in the middle of nowhere advances in extraordinary ways that generate creativity, artistry, individuality, humanity, peace, community, and all of the rewards that come with finding yourself, developing, and being at peace spiritually. This child may have nothing, but in another sense, he has everything by the advancement and growth from consistently being rewarded by his true and honest relationship with his instrument. The child in Austria falls way behind the child in the middle of nowhere due to the fact that all of the extraordinary rewards being granted to the child in the middle of nowhere are being denied to him and instead replaced with demands for prodigal advancement, with extraordinary punishment awaiting at the hands of his father should he not comply. This denial of the advancement received by the child in the middle of nowhere also is at the same time replaced with the greatest fame and monetary rewards that could possibly be received for anyone of his age group due to the extraordinary parroting and mimicking of other great musicians that came before him that young Mozart is now able to execute. Mozart the prodigy now attains everything that society could ever offer, from fame, admiration, and fortune to the coveted approval of his narcissistic dad. The child in the middle of nowhere, who has found himself through his instrument and thereby advanced far beyond Mozart at this point in his life, receives none of these superficial riches and rewards. Now, an extraordinary thing happens. The child in the middle of nowhere goes on to become a good human being. He makes a difference in people's lives and in his community, from his own wife and children to the men, women, wives, and children of others, due to the spreading of peace and joy that he has found through his instrument and is now able to bring to others. The child in Austria outgrows his prodigal abilities to parrot and mimic the sounds of others, and also finds his real self through his music. Through this combination of his extraordinary musical training, along with his own personal exploration and advancement, he has artistically outgrown anything that the superficial world could offer him. He is now exploring the true heights of his artistic potential by giving birth to music that stimulates the intellect, along with the ability to advance mankind for centuries to come. He gets thrown out of his position of servitude in Salzburg and is soundly rejected and disinherited by his father. utterly abandoned by society and heartbroken beyond belief, he composes over 600 musical works, including 21 stage and opera works, 15 masses, over 50 symphonies, until he dies at age 35, buried in a pine box without even the money for his own immediate family to be able to pay for his funeral. Yet, unlike others who may have received a similar fate for their sacrifices, his music lives on. And he receives performances today that he qualified for back in 1775 in cities such as Vienna that have since turned into a graceland of guilt. Both of these existences are honorable. Both made great contributions to others, as well as their community, society, and are great examples for the world at large. Both of their lives and efforts are a much greater alternative choice than the path of war, discrimination, hatred, and annihilation. The fact of the matter is, and this is where I say my famous quote, when we fill our souls up with creativity, artistry, and intelligence, and numerous other things of that nature, we have a better chance at avoiding the behavior that leads to destruction. And this is the story of my life through music, which inevitably became the story of Jazz for Peace.
It's a beautiful story. So tell us again, what's the book title and where can we find it?
So the title of the book is Paving the Path for Peace Through Music, The Amazing Story of Rick DellaRatta and Jazz for Peace. Author is Deborah Serratelli. So if you put Paving the Path for Peace Through Music into Amazon, for sure you'll get it. And I think they are branching out into other, where the Barnes, other places to sell it. But I know for sure it's on Amazon because it was stuck in Amazon for quite a long time. And we don't know why it was stuck there, but I can tell you this book was revealing a lot of issues because I was working with the author to provide information that show, unfortunately, that we are literally censoring peace. And this is where I have to draw the line. I'm the founder of Jazz for Peace. I cannot have you censoring peace. I was, revealing information and documentation that peace is being censored in the book. The book was stuck. And then a strange thing happened. All of a sudden, my posts and our team's posts on certain social media were kind of not being censored. Like all of a sudden, they were not being, what do they call it, shadow banned, where you're limited. They were like, someone just went brink and took the lid off that. And in 1 week, posts by Jazz for Peace got over 1 million impressions on one of the social media platforms. It was actually LinkedIn. Over 1 million in 1 week. So we documented that. And then we actually did a poll because Jazz for Peace has a lot of answers now to things, and I've been telling you about them, how we can go from 0 to 1. I mean, going from 0 to 1 is a big deal. I mean, it's amazing what this world, how many things for the better will change if we just give it that one. You still got your 99%, by the way. So, I mean, war people shouldn't be complaining. I'm just taking, we're just going now 1 here. Okay. It's not a big deal, but, we did a poll on our proposal for the situation in the Mideast, for example, and up against the other options that are available. And our poll was we had a link where you could see what we are suggesting, and it received 96% from Israelis, from Palestinians, because I'm the one who united them at the first place at the United Nations, and the rest of the world. So, a lot of people would like to see a more peaceful planet.
Definitely. And I'm glad for your work because it's major. Is there any way for people to get involved with Jazz for Peace?
There's a couple of podcasts where I actually explain how the whole benefit concert series works, etc. And basically, there's an entry for any person on this planet with Jazz for Peace. I mean, even if it's as a volunteer, you could just, send a little email, info@jazzforpeace.org, and say, hey, I'd like to get involved with Jazz for Peace. And we could send you, the volunteer page where you could choose things that you're interested in and all that. Just to volunteer is great, wonderful. But another way is people will send a comment of something like, I saw Luca's podcast and blah, blah, blah. And maybe they have an outstanding cause themselves, or they are connected, a member of an outstanding organization or whatever. And again, we can start taking that seedling and working with them to grow it into an empowerment tree.
I love that. Yes, that's good. Can also people donate to your to the foundation, to the charity?
Sure. So if you go to jazzforpeace.org and you just scroll to the bottom of our homepage, at the bottom, you can actually click on a donate button. And of course, all of these, there's so many ways to help us get from 0 to 1. So, I mean, just if nothing else, you could just make a small donation. It would mean so much to us.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Before we move on to a series of fast questions, another amazing thing about you is that the former President Obama mentioned you and congratulated you on your philanthropic work.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. And see, when I say empowerment tree, that was actually branch number 7 of that we grow in that empowerment tree. So in that specific instance, it started with me playing concerts around New York. And then I decided, well, let me help outstanding causes. There's got to be at least 12 or 13 maybe outstanding causes in New York City. I mean, it's such a big city. I had no idea there were over 60,000 registered nonprofits just in New York City. So there's no shortage of these outstanding causes. Now, which ones are legitimate? Which ones really want to, be who they say they are? That's a different ballgame. But most of the ones who want to get involved in Jazz for Peace are they really believe in their mission, and they really want to, they're really
valid.
Sincere. They're valid because they want, we're going to help you get from where you are now to where you need to be, So, I mean, if you don't want to do that, then, we're not the people for you to call, but we're actually going to do it. So through that, I started to learn, because they would contact me. And the reason I really kept going is because the organizations would write to me after the events, and they would always say something. And I was like, are you sure? And they, yes, you made it. You got to keep doing this, they'd say, And after a bunch of them, I'd get calls from some of them. Hey, that event, you might not think you made us rich or whatever, but we got so much publicity, and that publicity meant so much to us. Or another one will say, the sponsors, we got sponsors and they're still with us today. Some of them would say 3 years later, we just want to let you know they're still sponsoring us 3 years after, through your event. So now we get these little branches together. And one of them said to us, we are so much more prestigious after our Jazz for Peace event. You know what I mean? The mayor, the people, all these people recognize us. We were just another organization, but now we're more prestigious. So when this woman called me from Chicago, whose son had been basically, unfortunately, murdered by a monstrous person who she felt was deprived of arts and culture. She felt this man who had committed this murder became a monster by being deprived of the arts, deprived of culture, deprived of all of these qualities in my famous quote. And I told her, I'm gonna deliver Barack Obama to. I didn't know. I had no idea I was gonna do it, but I said I'm gonna deliver, because Obama had been a senator in that state, and so that was his jurisdiction. So I was gonna try to get him to do his job as a public servant. Most people don't realize these elected officials are public servants. They're supposed to do this stuff. So again, from me knowing that, we started to make new and prestigious supporters a part of everyone's empowerment tree. You see what I mean? It started in New York with, them telling me, and then also the mayor of New York, he had become a supporter of one of the organizations that we were helping. So, sure enough, he did come through for that event. And we have that letter online. I mean, people can look at it. It's really jazzforpeace.org/ObamaLetter.pdf, I think is the address. And you just see the actual letter that he sent us.
All of the links will be in the description box, so we'll find a way to put it there.
Great.
I mean, this is incredible. Congratulations again. So are you ready for a few quick questions?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay, ready?
Mm-hmm.
If you could be anything or anyone in the world, what would you be?
I'd be someone who makes a difference.
You're already that.
But there's so much more. Well, you're right. But see, in my mind, I'm like, there's so much more I could do. But I'm so glad that you feel that I'm at least on the right track. Okay, great.
Definitely. What are you? Okay, before we start this question, do you believe in manifestation?
I do, because I heard something about you doing some sort of kind of a hypnosis, and I was so fascinating.
I do.
That's so fascinating.
Yes.
I'd love to know more about that.
It feels like magic.
Wow, that's amazing.
I love that. I've done so much with hypnosis that I didn't even think I could do. So it's definitely interesting. Sometimes, manifestation comes into that. Although I like to rationalize it and explain it in a more almost scientific way. But let's go on with the question. What are you manifesting right now?
Anything that moves the world from 0 to 1 would be something in my periphery and my vision that I would like to see manifested. I'd like to see the world come together, because I really think that this activity could bring all of us together, because it's something that all of us share. It's common ground that all of us have within us. Instead of dividing us, it is uniting us, and we would all be feeling the growth. In other words, every incremental change, we would all be feeling it together.
Great. Next question. What's your favorite quote, mantra, or affirmation?
Well, there's quite a few because of those famous quotes. I've read a lot of the other people's, be the change that you want to see in the world is a real simple one. It's been attributed to Gandhi. And then there's these articles that Gandhi didn't say it, but he said something similar in a larger speech and whatever. But, people attribute it to Gandhi. And it's a pretty good little concise thing. Be the change you want to see in the world. So it's an easy one to choose, but there's so many great ones.
Yeah. And it's right on point with what you're doing.
True.
What are you inspired by?
I'm inspired by the unique and amazing qualities that every single human being has and the potential that they have. So it's like, I feel like there was a great piano player named Art Tatum, because I was just talking to someone from Toledo, Ohio earlier. And this guy, Art Tatum, back in the same day as all those other jazz greats, he once said he never saw a piano player he couldn't learn something from, which shocked everyone, because everyone thought that he knew everything and they considered him the god of jazz piano at the time. So I like to take that and I like to put it right into life and say, I've never met a person I couldn't learn. I like to look at each person as someone I could learn something from.
100%. And this is why I have these conversations, because I think we all can do that. 3 things that you can't do without.
Okay. I would say music would be one. The opportunity to make a difference would be another. And the activities that make my mind, body, and spirit healthy.
That's brilliant. So this one is a little personal, but I'm sure we can do it.
Okay.
If you could speak to your child self, what would you say to them today?
If I could speak to myself as a child, what would I say? I think I would say there is a path within you that you are already in touch with, and all you need to do is keep that close and protected and dear to your heart, and use that to guide you no matter what other emotions and feelings and messages you are receiving.
Ooh, that's good. When was the last time you cried and why?
I tried to read this forward to somebody after I wrote it, and I could not hold it together. So I could have easily cried reading that forward to you, because it's just it's just unbelievable, the information in that forward. And So I would say the last time I cried, because reading this forward is so hard. I tried to read the forward and I couldn't hold it together. So that was the last time,
Well,
only a few months ago.
and now you do it.
Well, now I do it because I'm like, you've got to keep it together for the benefit of, communicating the book,
I appreciate that even more now. So amazing. Thank you. So last one, what gives you joy?
Achievement, personal achievement, whether it's musical or whether it's a sports activity that I like to do, or just something that fulfills my spirit, and also making a positive difference in other people, to others.
Well, you must be pretty joyful then.
Well, I do. I have to admit that there's a bit of inner joy in me from. Well, you know what? That's kind of why I kept going, because the very first Jazz for Peace thing I did, I just did it, and we just did it, and I wouldn't have thought much about it, except that the guy wrote me after, and the things he said, and he said all these things and how it affected the kids, and he just, and I was like, it was really? And he said, yeah. And I said, damn, if I brought that to you through this, then I'd be willing to do that again for somebody else. Why not?
Yeah, I'm with you.
I've never brought it to your country, I don't think. Jazz for Peace. What you're in the UK now? Yeah,
yes.
It's a crazy thing, because I played in the UK one time, and if you go online, you will see people selling pictures of me at that performance for $500 each. It was in London. It was at a famous jazz club called Ronnie Scott's, and I was brought there with a bunch of jazz greats in my band for a week-long engagement. And a famous or a supposedly famous jazz photographer came and took pictures, and he sells them through Getty Images, and you can buy all three and get a discount, like $1,487 for all three photos. So, and I haven't been, but I haven't been back since. So I haven't been to the UK with Jazz for Peace. Actually, when I played in the UK, it was, I see it over there, it was the July before September 11th. It was only like 3 months before September 11th. So I went back. What part of the UK are you from?
From the south. Not far from London.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
I'm just throwing that out there. It'd be nice to bring Jazz for Peace to the UK.
Yeah. I mean,
I did. But, and here's a crazy thing. I did do a virtual performance in London only a few months ago, maybe 2 months ago. What happened was a club in London contacted me, a person, he was a promoter, and he was doing a local event with creative minds, featuring creative minds, and there were musical artists, and they were all local. And he said, I know we can't bring an international artist to this, but would you, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay. So what they did was at a certain point in the evening, they pulled down a giant screen, and I appeared virtually from right where I am now.
Wow.
Yeah, so I have performed one time in the UK since Jazz for Peace, but I wasn't there myself.
The wonders of the internet.
Yeah.
You know what? The UK, I mean, we couldn't do it without charities. Everything that is possible is because there's a charity behind it in the UK. So let's make sure that something happens between some charity and you.
Right.
Please get in touch with Rick, because it'll be an honor to have you back in the UK.
Yeah. I mean, what you can do if you come across a charity, share your podcast with them. Say, watch this podcast, and then let that's a great start for them, just to watch your podcast.
Let's make things happen. Yes.
Great.
Perfect. So next thing we're going to do before I let you go is I have a jar here with it's more like a bowl with some quotes that I like.
Okay.
But I want you to pick one.
Okay.
Cool.
Stop. Okay.
That's it. Can we have a little musical suspense? Be grateful for what you have while in pursuit of what you want. Jim Rohn.
Great. That's extremely important. Because so many people are dissatisfied because they think what they get is going to make them happy, and that's a big letdown when they get it, and then they realize that was not going to. It's the journey the journey plays such a big role. The actual journey and being thankful and being right where you are in the moment plays a role in that manifestation. And then once you get there, you'll see, no, it's not. You're just at another place where you're just where you are now, but in a new place because you have a new goal now that you've achieved this goal.
Yeah. And without gratitude, you're not going to be able to be grateful for what's to come, because if you don't practice gratitude for what you have now, then it becomes really, really difficult to be grateful for the future as well.
Yes.
Gratitude is a practice, and it must be practiced daily. Because if you notice at least 3 things that you're grateful for every day, and they don't have to be huge. They can be like, I'm grateful today it's sunny. I'm grateful I wake up and I feel great this morning. Or I'm grateful that I have a friend. It could be anything that sometimes we give for granted. And that will definitely shift our perception of what we are grateful for, and be in receiving mode as well.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's over and over. People have said this, where they slipped on that banana peel. They were trying so hard to get to something, not realizing that once they got there, it wasn't what they thought it was.
100%. Rick, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much. My pleasure, Luca.
Tell us again where we can find you, and we'll put all the links below.
Okay. So, just to reach us quickly is info at jazzforpeace.org. So info at jazzforpeace.org. And that's just, you can always just send an email there. We check the spam box eventually and make sure, we get that we do get your emails. And then, of course, online, there's a lot of places. I mean, I said Rick DellaRatta famous quote is another cool place to start. Of course, our website, jazzforpeace.org. And then there's rickdellarata.com if you just want to find out about me. So
Yes. And I was astonished by how much there is of you on YouTube. So if anyone just wants to go on YouTube and type Rick DellaRatta, they will find a lot of videos from you and your performance.
Yeah, there's some really new things on there because it's like a 4th of July holiday here. So I did a performance of Simon and Garfunkel's America, and then I went into a jazz improvisation, and that just came out like yesterday. And nobody really knows about it, but the few people that do know about it have told me they really enjoy that. So you should see that. There's another one somebody told me about he really likes called Smile. It's a Charlie Chaplin song, and I did a jazz rendition of that. So you can type in Rick DellaRatta Smile or Rick DellaRatta America. And there's another one where I took a jazz standard called Star Eyes, if you just want to be in the jazz idiom for the whole improvisation. And that's where I do this really classic jazz standard called Star Eyes. And then I do I take off, I launch off of that.
Again, thank you so much. And you've been an amazing guest.
My pleasure, Luca. Anytime.
So meta.
Next on So Meta.
Hi, my name is Nisma, and this is So Meta. I was in denial, and my whole body was in denial. It was like, and for good reason. It was keeping me safe because it knew that I had to do that to stay alive.
It's still illegal in a lot of countries to be gay, and in a lot of countries you can still die.
I think what happened to me was when I found music, I found a way to get some of that pressure, that stress out. If you want to know what your future looks like, just look at your today. I've lived so much of my life already being forced to betray myself.
Most people need some kind of permission to be who they want to be because they don't think they're there yet.
It was really rough.
Yeah.
My inner self was very mad and angry and sad and hurt and lonely and afraid. We grew up very religious, and I was closeted.
So